I think we're ready to go. So,
All right, have fun.
yeah, welcome everybody, and welcome to our first design site location subcommittee meeting. As Mark just stated, we have quite a bit on our agenda today, so we're going to get started here. I don't think there's any need for introductions, which is kind of a good thing. We've been working together for a number of months now, and we know each other. And I'm really excited about today's presentation. A lot of good information to take in. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Studio G.
Thank you. I tried to click share and it says that I don't have the ability right now.
Oh, Steve, can you take care of that?
He left. Kelly, do you want me to text him?
Okay. He's going to host the meeting, so I thought he was going to.
No, I'm here.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Sorry.
I have a question just while that's kind of ramping up and Mark or Steve's multitasking. So did everyone have a chance to have a look at the presentation that Mark sent, I believe, yesterday afternoon? Did everyone give a look at it just so we can kind of outline and set the stage for today's discussion?
I'm sorry, Meryl. I did
Yeah.
not.
I just saw
Okay, just so we know what we're walking into here. So no worries, no worries.
Try to share now.
Yep, we're good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. So what we'll do then is we'll dive into the evaluation criteria just as a quick overview to sort of show that everybody was pretty much on the same page with what they wanted to use as the criteria. Then we'll go through the options pretty quickly, spending more time on the ones that are most likely to be either realistic versions or ones that really require careful consideration. And then we would ask that at some point today, before the end of the day, you fill out the evaluation criteria individually. There's a Google form, and once you submit it, it will populate a chart for us so we can really quickly see what the numerical values are when comparing these options to each other. All right, so evaluation criteria, we got some feedback on some of those. It was mostly just a couple little tweaks here and a small addition. So these are sorted out by category. And what you'll notice is there's not really anything on here in terms of specific cost information. It's just pretty general terms. We will be getting cost information by the 27th from our estimator. And for the most part, it has somewhat of a chance of changing which direction we want to go in terms of which option we choose. But for the most part, based on what I know about the options, it's most likely to just confirm the decisions that you guys will be making today. The other thing that's not really included on here are the interior design factors. It's in italics down there. That is because we don't really know anything about the interiors yet. That is something we'll be able to talk about after Michelle and her team and the Ed Planner have wrapped up their work that they're doing. So that'll come later. We'll look at those. We've started a list of things that will be included in that. All right, so diving right in, the first option, this is one that the MSBA requires us to consider, and this is just purely a code upgrade to what you have. This gives you a couple opportunities to do things like replace the playground and make it fully accessible. We could maybe take the opportunity to rework some of the site circulation, things like that. But in general, there's no addition. It's purely just making code upgrades, life safety upgrades, energy code upgrades. This tends to be a pretty expensive option, especially when you're working with an older structure that doesn't have at all a lot of systems. So the entire academic wing would need fire protection. We would need to look at putting air conditioning in, full-blown air conditioning, instead of just piecemeal room by room. And it doesn't take into, we would have to do all the upgrades to the envelope to bring it up to code and also beef up the structure so that we can put photovoltaics on the roof. So it's a pretty expensive option. And so when you fill out your evaluation criteria for this, you can take all these things into account. Any comments on this one before I move past it? Okay, great. All right, option 2, these are the addition renovation options. The first one, 2.1, shows an addition over here to the east of the existing Shaker Lane. Both of these options demolish the existing academic wing. It's the oldest portion of the building. It does not have the air conditioning. It does not have the life safety. It doesn't have a full-blown elevator. And so we keep the newest portion of the building and then add an addition that is new construction academic wings. This actually works pretty well. It extends two of the corridors that you already have in the school, one that connects to a new gym, one that connects to the new academic wing. And then this frees up space within the building to do things like turn the existing gym space into a media center, and then take the existing library space and expand the administrative and special ed offices into that space. So it's kind of shifting some spaces around, upgrading things on the interior, but as in the code upgrade, you still have a lot of the same considerations in terms of upgrading the envelope, even of that the 90s portion of the building still needs to be upgraded. That involves thickening the walls and doing different treatments, replacing all the doors and windows, beefing up the structure so that we can put photovoltaics on top of it. Some of the drawbacks are that because we would be choosing to reuse some of the existing structure here, that means that we're trying to take these pieces of program and sort of fit it in where it fits, right? So if we put the media center into the existing gymnasium, that's sort of very limited in terms of square footage, and it's all one big boxy space. And so trying to make sure that your program fits the actual space that's available could be a challenge. Maybe it's not. The cafeteria and kitchen might get a little bit tricky because the kitchen is pretty undersized and the stage in the cafeteria is not really functioning as a stage right now. So there's issues like that, but it's definitely a real option to consider for a renovation and addition option. One positive thing about putting the addition here in this location is that it allows the existing septic system to not be disturbed during construction. And it also keeps the two fields available for community use. And then that new playground area, that sort of pink lumpish area, that would be installed on the slope that goes down to the lower field. And there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with a playground on a slope that are accessible and add a lot of interest and variety to the kids, and a lot of sort of climbing, going up and down hills, sliding types of activities. So that could be a really nice playground. And because it's easily accessible to the rest of the community, it's also a pretty nice community asset. We keep it away from all of the wetlands, and it's a pretty compact area of the site that we're building on. There is potential for some ledge to be there where we want to do the new academic wing, and it's also sort of close to the neighbors. So all things to consider on this option. Any comments before we look at the other ad reno option? Yes, Michelle.
Marilee, I have a couple questions. Just let me know if they're just not relevant here. Where would our students be when this takes place? Because I'm noticing where would they be displaced to?
Yeah, so we would keep the existing academic wing up while the new academic wing is being built. And then once it's built, they get shifted into there, demolish the existing academic wing and install the gym. So the students actually have a pretty easy move. It's going to be more the shuffling around of the other spaces that are a little bit more challenging. But in terms of their classroom and day-to-day activities, that's pretty minimally impacted.
So where I see the new academic wing,
Mm-hmm.
That's where our kids currently are, down that stretch.
No, it's here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
about that. Okay, all right. Second question, it'll come back to me. See if anybody else has a question. Parking, that was my other question.
Yep. So the existing academic wing is here. So once we demolish that, that really frees up this whole area of the site. So we can do bus loop here. We can do more parking inside the loop. This is expanded parking. One of the questions we have for you is how many parking spaces you will actually need. And we understand you probably don't have that answer right now because you're still making decisions about staffing, but we are guessing probably around 85 as a beginning number. So you could fit at least 85 parking spaces in here in this reconfiguration.
Okay. Okay.
All right, anything else? All right. Next one, this is also a renovation and addition. This one, instead of extending the new academic wing up into the woods here, we are pushing it down and building it onto the lower field. So what this does is it makes school a little more compact. It is potentially an easier site to build into because we know we're not going to be running into lead issues here, or it's much less likely to run into lead. It's already developed site, so we're not removing a ton of trees, doing all that site work. However, we are building onto that slope, which means that when you come in the front door and you make your way back here to the academic wing, you would be entering this on either the middle floor of a 3-story addition or the top floor of a 2-story addition. And so that means that you'd get kids going downstairs or upstairs or both. This is sort of divided in half because there's not enough grade levels to make it a full-blown 3-story building, but it's just 3 stories on this side. There's nothing in particular pro or con about that other than logistics of moving kids up and down stairs, but there might be an issue with the zoning and the height of the building that we're allowed to build. Alternatively, we could try to really squeeze this together so it does really fit onto 2 floors, but that would take further look, and we would do that if you decide that this is one of the options that you want to move forward with. One issue with this is that the current septic system would really be disturbed with this. Right now, the line sort of runs right through here and then down this road. So there would be a lot of complications with that. We would talk to our civil engineer about how to temporarily reroute it, or are we installing a new system out here that we connect to and sort of make it seamless for people in the building? But that's a level of complexity to this option. It does take away one full-size field for the town, but it does create this really nice outdoor learning and play area. As in the other option, it's a new academic wing, so we do the same phasing where we don't demolish the old academic wing until this one's built and then just move the kids over and then make the new gym. This also has an expanded bus loop and additional parking area, so you'd be able to fit all the cars that you need. And it sort of keeps it a little more compact on the site here, but because of the topography that we have here and the septic system, it's a little more complicated than the other addition renovation option. Any comments on this one? Yes.
Marilee, for the new academic wings, I guess I'm looking when I see outdoor learning and play, separated preschool and kindergarten. Are the pre-K kids in that new academic wing taking over the other field?
So what we would most likely do is these renovated classrooms right here, that would either be just for the preschool, so they're not traveling as far from the main entry when they come in, or those would be turned over to art and music as part of this community wing. And then over here, if this is a 2-story addition, it would sort of be because the ground is so sloped, you're able to walk in at the ground level on 2 different levels. So the lower level would most likely be the younger kids, the kindergarten and probably 1st grade, so that they can spill right out onto the play area there, and then 2nd graders upstairs. This is such a large area out here that it could easily be divided amongst whichever groups need to use it. So a separate pre-K area, separate kindergarten area, and each one of these lobes of the academic wing is 1 grade level. So the kids are all kept together with their age group, and it would be arranged in the same learning community that you guys have been discussing on the interior side of things.
Would our students be able to stay in the school during the renovation?
My concern,
Yeah,
I
same
didn't see on
situation
the other
as
ones,
the
you
other
guys
one.
just saw the,
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
sorry.
I'm done.
My concern is what I'm envisioning with the new pre-K for safety reasons is that when the kids walk out, they're not walking out into the open space like they are now and then entering an enclosed area, that they're walking out into an already enclosed area for safety purposes. Those are some of the things that we've seen in the building walkthroughs, is that the kids are not, like right now, our kids walk out, then they walk into a fence. I would love to see them just walk out and I just don't know if this is possible with this space, because now they're walking.
We could make that work with any of these options. It's just a matter
Okay.
of how we attach the fence to the building. So any of these options will be able to do that. All right, anything else on this? Okay, now moving into the new construction options. This first one shows new construction at the upper field currently on the site. This yellow outline shows where the existing school is. So this is completely separate from the school. The new school is built, the kids move into it, everybody moves into it, and then the old school is demolished. So very little impact to the people in the building. The septic line that runs through here sort of sneaks past here, so we could avoid disturbing that during this construction. Because it is new construction, we're able to fit all of the educational program space in here and design it exactly the way that you like it. And this one thing that I really like about some of these options is the proximity of this wooded area so close to the school that you can do a little nature walk, or even if it's wetlands, you can do sort of little boardwalks and lots of outdoor learning opportunities for the children that aren't, that are sort of more spur of the moment, right? You go for a walk in the woods, you don't know what you're going to see. So it could be anything. And I think there's something really nice about that for kids and their exploration and the way that they learn. All of these new construction options have a separate bus and car loop. We'll make sure that there is enough parking spaces for everybody. One thing about this option is that sort of everything along this dashed black line to the south is available for community use. So we've got all of this new fields or new recreational space available for the town. You could potentially add a playground here that's not super tied to the school, but is a resource for the town. We preserve this lower field as well for the town, and then the community parts of the building, such as the gymnasium, cafeteria, maybe the media center, is all part of the building here. So this really ties it into the community in terms of saying that this is not just for these students, but this is for all of us. And then the more private academic wings back here for the kids has a very safely contained area back here where people from the outside have no access to it. All right, any comments on this one? Yes, Mark.
Just real quick, the grade differential, well, how's that handled? You know, it drops back in the site there. You're going to bring everything up and then refill or all that.
So this, for the most part, this area is flat. There is some sloping that happens here into a swale. So we would be careful about how close we get to that. It might involve a retaining wall, or we could potentially push it to the north far enough that we could avoid that. And then this is sort of a gradual slope just going up. So this is, unless we get into some crazy ledge and slope over here that we don't know about yet, this is pretty minimal site work compared to some of the other options.
Great, thanks.
Yes, Steve.
Once the existing school is demolished, those new fields that are there, is that part of what the MSBA will cover, or is this us?
So if you are on one site like this and you build at the location of one of the fields, which is extremely common for what schools do, then, and Mark and Suresh, please correct me if I'm wrong, the MSBA in that case will reimburse demolishing the existing building, and then the landscaping that needs to be done to replace that big hole in the ground that now exists is considered reimbursable by the MSBA. And it doesn't necessarily have to be fields, although it is nice to take a field, replace a field, but it's a lot more space down here than what is being taken over by the new school. So it has a lot of affordances for what the community could use the space for. Yes, Stacy.
Yes, just one thing that I was thinking about is we haven't really been told what the time differentials will be for these different options. So like if we're doing a complete renovation, does it get done quicker versus trying to do a partial renovation? Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, so an addition usually takes longer than a new construction option just because of the complexity of phasing. We've tried to do the addition renovation options as being minimally phased. They will involve some what's called summer slammers. So you are getting all the staff members out during the summer. You're going in really quickly and putting up partitions or redoing finishes or doing all the interior work as quickly as possible so that it limits the disturbances to them. This is a multi-year project, so we could have a couple of really hardcore summers that go like that, but the impact to the students would be minimal because we're sort of keeping that academic wing as a distinct unit that gets built, shifted over, and then demolished. Yes, Sarah.
Okay.
Yeah, to answer the question regarding the site work reimbursement, pretty much within the, the parameters of the MSBA, they have a percentage of total cost of the building which they allow, but the building demolition is included. The abatement of any asbestos in the building is not, and also any abatement of any oil tanks is not. So that's always excluded if it's required to be done. So there are some inclusions, some exclusions, but pretty much is the overall cost of the site work is also limited to how much they will reimburse based on the total project cost. So construction costs. So the fields which have to be replicated again, they will be included, but how much will they be included? That will be determined as we make the design. And to answer, I think the question, Michelle, you have regarding the ease of construction, new construction is much more easier than the renovation, because in the renovation with the existing building in place, you're almost working with a construction management at risk, whereas the new construction, you can almost go design bid build, which is much cheap, inexpensive compared to a CMR project. So that's the determination we'll make once we get to which option to go for.
Yeah, those are good rules of thumb, that the new construction is cheaper, not cheaper, but it's easier and takes less time. The costs are a separate matter. Yes, Steve.
So I don't know if I'm allowed to ask a question. I'm not on the committee, but where the new fields are, there is a big elevation difference between the current parking lot and behind the building. How would that be handled?
So there's a bowl right here. This is all fairly flat. And then this area up here is fairly flat, and then it slopes down here. So most likely what would happen is you could fit a baseball field here, and you could fit several like youth soccer fields along here, or it could just be open play space. So this is sort of left ambiguous with the dashed lines, just to sort of show the scale of the size of the property that we're talking about down here. Yeah, Mike.
Just a question on the parking. It doesn't look like there's a ton of parking with this option. I don't know if there's enough here.
That's true. These are very diagrammatic options. So whenever we develop these options further, we'll make sure that you have enough parking.
Okay, and no issue with the new roadway connection there?
So this is Shaker Lane here, and there's utilities along this road, so we can bring utilities in here. Good. And this is also the location of, there's a dirt road right now that I think DPW uses to maintain the field, or it might be up here, somewhere along here. But either way, this property touches Shaker Lane, so we have the ability to run a new road through there.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments on this one? Okay. Next new construction option. This one shows construction at the lower field. This, I think, is an instance of us doing our due diligence of exploring every possible building location on the site to make sure that we've exhausted our options. This yellow outline, again, is where the existing school is. The new one would be built on the lower field. It is showing overlap here, but this is diagrammatic. We would make sure that there was not a conflict there so that you could keep the old school in operation while the new one's being built. This one is not, in my opinion, it's not as functional as the other option. First, because it really cuts this upper field off from the rest of the community. People to access that field, they would need to be coming around here to visit the field, which is not so different from what they're doing now, but the language that we've been using in the story that we've been telling of making this a resource for the community, this sort of goes against that. We also get pretty tight to the wetlands over here. The lower field, as we understand, gets pretty wet at times, so we would have to be looking carefully at what's happening down in the corner where we're closest to the wetlands. We might run into some poor soil conditions with organics, or I'm not sure what other conditions are under there, but we need to explore it all. This field is quite a bit smaller than the upper field, so we've had to divide the academic wing in half, which, you know, maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, I'm not sure. It does allow you to have a totally separate pre-K area, separate from the rest of the school, and you do still have a separate community area that's able to be separated off from the more private areas of the school. We still maintain this existing connection onto the site here and this one here, and then this whole area could become parking, fill out as many parking spaces as we need, separate bus loop and car loop, and there is plenty of access to outdoor learning and play and access to the woods for those nature walks. So it is a viable option, but in our opinion, we don't think it works as well as building on the upper field. Any comments on this one? All right, so the last one here, and this one is very interesting, and I think that whoever suggested this is onto something. The building, we took the same massing as we used in the other new construction options, so we're comparing apples to apples, and put it on the site. We did a pretty careful study of where the Beaver Brook is, where the wetlands are, and where we suspect they actually are, because the GIS data gets outdated pretty quickly as wetlands and nature changes. But either way, the brook is here, and this navy blue line that runs through here is the 200-foot protection zone of that brook. So even with that boundary there, we're able to fit the new construction here. It does take away a field from the community, and right now that field is being used by the Russell Street School for their recess, and it's also used for sports in the evenings and the weekends. There is this opportunity here to create sort of a communal play space that's shared between the two schools, which maybe that's good, maybe it's better to keep the age differences separate, so that's something to think about. Another concern we have is the security aspect of having one entry and one exit to the site right here. So adding a whole other school onto the site is really going to congest things down here. So we looked at the potential for adding a connection that leaves the site through here. It could go around the library here, or it could go straight out to Shattuck Street. There's already a dirt road along here, so that would not be too much effort to turn that into an actual roadway, but that does have traffic impact on this whole area of the town. With the wetlands being here, there are some concerns about the soil quality of what's happening here. And it's also really squeezing us in terms of the ability to expand this in the future. One thing the MSBA requires us to look at is how could we add an additional 4 classrooms or so to this in the future if you experience a large amount of growth. Does this have the ability to do just a small addition to accommodate those kids? yes, there's room to do it sort of back here, but it's pretty awkward and it's not totally ideal, but it could be done. But more importantly, when the middle school is up for replacement or addition or renovation, or when the Russell Street School is eventually up for the same thing, now we've taken away this potential building area on the site and giving it to Shaker Lane. So you're sort of really limiting your future options of what can be done with the site. But that being said, it does fit. There is a lot of existing parking that can be used. There's a lot of freedom in the site here in terms of doing safe circulation. And it does have this central campus location. So there's really a lot to look at in this option and consider. One major thing, though, is that if we build on a site that is not the existing Shaker Lane property, then the MSBA does not consider the demolition of the existing building to be reimbursable. So the town would then be responsible for demolishing or maintaining or repurposing the existing Shaker Lane School if this option is chosen. Any comments on this one?
Just one other thing to mention, Mary Lee, with the addition of a classroom at each grade level at Shaker Lane, it would there would be a natural tendency to have to do that at Russell Street School as well.
Mhm.
So we'd be looking for additional space or an addition as well. So, and I guess another comment, just with this school population, with 3 schools in one area, we would have over almost 1,200 students in that location. Percentage of our parents that drive students to school is significant. So there'd be a lot of traffic going through there during the day in the morning when school is out. Our athletic events, because our high school gets out earlier, we would also have traffic at the end of the day, during the spring sports, fall sports season. Something to consider as well.
Okay, I see Michelle first.
So I'm going to start with the positive. I love the idea of all of us being together, but, and unfortunately there are so many buts. We recently rechanged our times, our start time and end time. And I'm worried about the piece that Kelly just said, the coming in, the going. I believe, I can't get on this screen, but I believe that Russell Street's car loop runs towards the right of this field and then comes down right into Russell Street, which would impact us even with the additional route. So as much as I love the idea of this, I think, in theory it's great, but in practice it might be really challenging.
Okay, thank you. Stacy?
Yeah, sorry, I just realized my computer was sitting in a puddle of water as my water bottle was leaking. It's like, why am I all wet? So you had mentioned that MSBA won't reimburse for any of the demolition of the old building if we relocate. So do you have any ideas as to what that cost would be to the town?
How big's the building? I can tell you right now.
Oh.
How big is the current building?
60,000-ish, I want to say.
72,000 square feet.
72,000? Okay, my spreadsheet handy.
We were seeing in the assessors, we were actually just working on this actually, but 60,850 is what we came up on. So I'm curious, the RFS had 70,000. So we're trying to nail that down actually. Who said the 72?
Me, I did. Steve did.
Oh, Steve. Okay. Where does that number come from? We're just trying to reconcile the different numbers. And we can take this offline in a different discussion.
It's right around 70,000 square feet. I thought it was 72. I thought I read it someplace.
Okay. All right.
Probably 650, 700,000 without abatement.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's just
plus site.
Just to demo.
Site. Yeah, that's just the demo plus site work.
So
Right.
$1
Like
square foot, Mike, is that kind of where?
Union $7, like 7 to 10 a square foot just for the demo, and then the abatement is can go anywhere. I don't think there's a lot of it here, so it shouldn't be a big number. But that's just the demo piece. Then you got to think about all the site work. So it probably $1 million, maybe a little
Okay.
less.
Thank you. That's good to know.
Okay, anybody else have comments on this? All right, so this slide sort of shows them all at once for a comparison, just to give you a chance to discuss among yourselves the pros and cons of them. And you don't have to reach a consensus now, but we would like for everybody to have a good understanding of all these options so that you can fill out the evaluation criteria and feel confident in the numbers that you're assigning to these. And just so you know, the MSBA, we are required to choose 3 options: the code upgrade, one of the renovation and addition options, and at least one new construction option.
So Mary Lee, the option 4.1 at the back end of that field, is there much, or back end of the school more correctly, is there much space left back there?
This back here, there's a decent amount of space sort of here in this sliver for outdoor learning and some play space. And then there's a pretty good buffer here between the woods. So for this population and this number of kids, I think this is a pretty good size space for play and outdoor learning.
Mm-hmm. But it would require a shared playground, is that correct? Between Russell Street and Shaker Lane?
Well, Russell Street, the Russell Elementary would be losing this field that they use for play.
Mm-hmm.
There's no play equipment on it now, so they're just losing the play space. But if we put a playground for Shaker Lane here with the adjacency to the Russell Elementary School, we could reconfigure the traffic loop to make that a safe connection so it becomes shared among the 2 schools. But then that becomes a scheduling issue, and when is it free for which age group and all that type of stuff.
For sure. Thank you.
I just, should I raise my hand or is anyone else? Well, Stacy, you want to go? I had a thought about the Russell or the Wincombe field.
Yeah, but I just had a question about having all of the schools in one area does seem beneficial in many ways, also creates some issues. But how does that affect our busing? Does that alleviate any busing costs that we have with all of the kids kind of being centralized in one area, or does it still, we're still keeping all of the schools separate on the buses? Kelly, do you have any maybe insight to that?
We would, and I'm gonna have Steve chime in. We had a brief discussion about this. I think the cost savings would be minimal because of the number of students, if anything, because of the number of students riding the buses. We're really, when we look at the number of buses for Shaker Lane and Russell Street School, it's the student population that's driving the number of buses as well that we need. So Steve, you can certainly chime in as well.
Yeah, we'd have to study that, but we're running 7 buses for each school, and they deliver about 10 minutes apart. You might pick up a bus or 2, so there might be a little bit of savings. But on paper, the buses are full right now, and then you still have the bus routes. They have to do the distances. And traffic around town that you have to deal with. So you couldn't just eliminate a ton of buses because you still have all the other busing issues you have to deal with, traffic, distances, bus routes, and all that kind of stuff. I don't think you would eliminate that many buses, maybe 1 or 2 possibly, but that's just my opinion.
And I'm wondering, Stacy, with the time difference, like what are we doing to supervise those children if they are on the Russell Street time for 10 minutes? That would be another avenue to look at.
Right.
I was just going to emphasize, I think the concern I'm hearing about the loop when I was there with Kelly and Steve, when we were standing at the site, there's one way in and one way out. And Kelly, something else that you brought up when we were there is in a situation that needs quick evacuation or quick emergency access, having that one access point could be problematic with this many students on one site.
Yep.
So I just also wanted to bring that to light, that this is really a very compact scenario. It's the middle school is a little bit separate, but Russell Street, it's a lot of kids in one spot. So just something to
And
be
again,
aware of.
as
Yeah.
Kelly pointed out, in the afternoon, the high school uses the track and alumni field for most of their major sporting events. So now you'd have athletic traffic down there and athletic event parking, possibly at the same time that Shaker Lane and Russell Street schools are being dismissed.
Yeah.
So you really have it's a huge traffic concern.
I mean, right now, Russell Street for their pickup in the end of the day has two to three lines along Alumni Field for cars waiting to pick their children up after the buses leave. So, I mean, I'm sure some of these things could be worked out, but to me, there is a space issue and a congestion issue that I don't think we would be able to overcome.
In looking at it, Kelly, the 4.1, it does look congested, but it's something that we needed to look at and come up with a decision and the reasons why we're saying no and yes.
Yep.
I mean, just the $1 million that it would take us to demolish the existing Shaker Lane or do something with that building, if we were to keep it for some reason. Is an extra cost. It's an extra piece of the puzzle. And also redoing the fields at the existing Shaker Lane go by the boards too, whereas we could probably get some of that done too. So as much as it was intriguing to look at, I think the concerns that you have about the traffic flow and the amount of people there for that site is probably too tight.
Yeah, just not enough street access.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that we took a look at that because it's nice to see that a building could fit in there and you know we gave it our best shot, so to speak, to see if it would work and if there was more room and easy egress, it would have been more palatable.
Suresh, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, and one more consideration would be also the cost is going to go up with the new construction at the Whitcomb Field because of the traffic, you know, the construction being restricted to some certain hours when they can make deliveries, when they can, you know, their deliveries will be listed to between after 9 a.m. after the kids get into school, because 7 to 9, you don't want to add construction traffic to the time when students are coming in, and the same thing at dismissal time. So that makes it even, more complicated and more challenging. Though the idea of having a central campus is always great, but if it was planned way ahead of the time, I think that works much better than trying to fit something in. It might fit in there, but the question is how much inconvenience you want to go through during the next 3 years of construction time frame.
Mary, can you go through each of the options and talk to where the expansion would be and how easy the expansion would be for each?
Sure. Let me turn on. Do I have the ability to sketch? I guess not. That's okay. All right. So option one, no addition, purely renovation.
Yep.
Option two, this rectangle right here is a new gymnasium. And this bow tie shape over here is a new academic wing. This is all existing Shaker Lane. When we make these connections right here, that would involve the removal of, I think, maybe 2 classrooms to get that connection, but those are made up for in this new academic wing, and that could be phased pretty easily because of the way the building is structured with the corridors. So we're keeping, of the original building, I believe the original, I guess it was originally a cafeteria. That's the only piece that's really being saved in both of these renovation and addition options.
And where would the future expansion go to?
It would carry on in this direction.
Continue down.
Okay.
Beverly, I apologize for interruption, but when you there were so right. Okay. I guess my question is, that's like the current K wing, right? We'd lose a couple down there.
Yes, but that would not happen until we built this new academic wing. So you're not going to have to find a home for them during construction.
I know, I guess I'm thinking of the aftermath. Am I going to have 4 of one group here and then 2 over there?
No. We'd keep all the grade levels totally together. And
Okay.
then these classrooms would become probably art and music or potentially preschool. So we're really consolidating each grade level in every single one of these options, except for the code upgrade.
Awesome. Thank you.
So Mary Lee, we would have grade level neighborhoods with that
Yeah.
renovation?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then for the other addition renovation option, the same new gymnasium over here, bow tie over here is a new academic wing with a little bit more complication because of the slope of the site. And then the classrooms, again, we would need to remove, I think, just 1 classroom to create that connection through there. But then we have this group of classrooms left over that are either art and music or they are pre-K. And however we configure all of this, we're still keeping the kids of each grade level together in a community.
And an expansion would be where on that one?
So expansion, yeah, you could either expand over here, or we could make it so that there's structure here to expand on the highest floor.
Okay.
Is there anything evident in terms of cost differences between those 2 proposals?
I believe that this one would be more cost effective. We avoid the whole situation of phasing out the septic system because we're able to avoid that pathway. This disturbance to the rest of the site is pretty minimal. We really don't need to do hardly any site work over here other than the playground, and we're still able to maintain the fields. So in general, 2.1 is a much more simple, clean option.
And would it still give us the vision that we have, that we've been creating for the school?
Yeah, one of the good things that is working out pretty well is because the academic wing of your building is the oldest part and is the part that is the most difficult to make work, it makes the most sense to demolish that. And so then that gives us the opportunity for a brand new academic wing that does all the things that you want it to do.
That's very helpful. And 2.2 would be very similar in terms of aligning with the vision that we have?
Yes, this is another instance where it's just sort of doing the due diligence of, instead of pushing out in this direction, we could also push it out in this direction, but that has implications of building there instead.
Okay. Does anybody have any other comments about option 2.1 and 2.2? As Mary Lee indicated, they're going to have to come up with one renovation addition recommendation.
JC, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm just looking. There aren't too many abutters for any of these options, but I'm just curious, like all of these are residences along the edges of any of the new builds. Is that correct? Like, do we know how many houses those are?
There, I believe, are 3 or 4 houses in this little corner here.
Yeah, I see
Yep.
3. Yeah.
And this is a slope. So the building it's going to appear lower to them because it's lower down on the slope.
Mhm.
But it will still impact them, but not as much as it would if this was a flat site.
Mhm.
This option, the abutters are much less disturbed by the new addition. And then for these 2 new construction options, we're pretty far away from new abutters. The issue with this one is we'll have some conversations with these people about having a new turn into the school right here.
Okay. Yeah, just like I said, there's not a lot of abutters, but just something to keep in mind too, how much we're disrupting the neighbors'
Totally.
neighborhood areas.
And that's one of the selection criteria, so you'll be able to put a number on that.
Michelle, what are your thoughts about the 2 options for renovation?
Kelly, you want my answer? I think I would just go with 2.1 just because it wouldn't affect the septic system, trying to think of what's more cost effective for the district as far as the ad reno.
Okay.
That's what I was hearing from everyone or from Marilee.
Helpful.
I
So
think 2.1 makes most sense.
Yeah, I
The
like the look of
construction seems
2.2,
it's gonna
but
be easier.
2.1 is the more feasible.
yeah, I feel the same way. There's nothing we'd be giving up by not going with 2.2, Marilee.
No, I don't believe so. Travel distances are going to be about the same. Access to the site in terms of kids being able to walk out directly onto the site is about the same for both of them. It's just the quality of the site they'd be walking out to, I think, is slightly better for 2.1. But this is sort of getting a little more detailed than the study we've done yet. Any one of these options that we pick, we would do as much as we could to make it as really nice and great for the kids as possible and meet your educational program.
Perfect. Stacy, what are your thoughts on the 2 options?
That's between 2.1 and 2.2.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think 2.1 seems like it makes the most sense because it's the least kind of disruptive for a lot of the logistical things that we need to consider. And I was just wondering, so we have like 3.2. I love how with 3.2, with the new construction, we have all of like the community fields out in the front. Is that something where that can be configured into 2.1? Because it looks like it's parking and traffic, but there's no way to continue to have those community areas in the front and away from the learning areas.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Say that again. You want to take this concept of the field and incorporate it into 2.1?
Well, so yeah, in 2.1, it looks like you have like the parking and you have all of those. Never mind. I'm good.
Oh, no, yeah.
I'm seeing that that's like your traffic. Yeah.
This access road, we can put parking all along here. We can make these fields actually much more accessible to the community than it is right now. So this one also, 2.1, is a good choice for the community at large in terms of accessing these fields and then this new improved playground.
Yeah, it seems like 2.1 seems like it's a better of the 2.
Meryl?
I just want, I'm the timekeeper here. I just want to make sure if we are going to lose anybody at 1 o'clock, or is everyone doing okay? Or because we do want to make sure that we have our next steps as far as getting your feedback as far as the evaluation criteria. Do we have everyone for a little bit longer? I guess is my question.
Technically have a meeting at 1, but
How much
So
left?
I'll just go through the last couple of slides here so that you can go if you need to, but this is just a sort of a reminder of what all of the selection criteria were, and then a QR code and a link there to go fill out the form. It's going to take you through every single option and ask you to rank these on a scale of 0 to 4 on all of these qualities, where they fall. And then as you do this, I'm going to see results populate live in a chart that looks like this. And what it's going to do is take all your individual responses for each of these and average them together. So we get an average score in each category for each option. And then it's going to add all those numbers up and give us a total number so that we'll see which options get the most points. And then this will become, we're asking you to fill this form out by the end of the day today so that we can take those results and get them ready and present them to the full SBC, because as the subcommittee, you are making this as your recommendation to the SBC of which 3 options we're choosing to move forward.
You just send around this presentation?
I believe Mark, are you there?
Yeah, I sent it out to the whole subcommittee yesterday. If you didn't receive it, let me know. I'll send it again.
I don't think I saw it, Mark.
I don't
Okay.
think I did. I'll have to look again.
All right,
Do we have a few minutes so we could talk about 3.1 and 3.2?
please.
I love that. Everyone has their marching orders who does need to hop though. I hope that's, yeah, absolutely, Kelly. This is a great conversation.
So when,
Thank you.
yeah, thanks, Mike.
Thanks for your
Mike.
time.
So when we look at 3.1 and 3.2, I guess the first question I have to ask, is there any option that there would be an obvious increased cost to as compared to the other option?
.2, it will be touching that septic line,
Mhm.
and the quality of the soil down there, because it is close to the wetlands, that always causes some issues.
I would say this septic system that we're talking about, our civil engineer and the Steve, Mark also is going to be on the call. We're going to have a call with the folks, the management company of the system next Tuesday, I believe. So we're going to get more information about how feasible it is, if it's even possible, because there's a lot more toilets than you have now. So understanding a bit more about what's possible in the system. It's going to be a hefty price tag if we have to replace it. We want to understand why it's down the river and through the woods and not on the site. So
Okay.
what's the reason? So we have a lot of questions to unpack before we're like, hey, it's the system. So maybe table that, we'll have more information after that conversation about really, you know, I don't know, do we abandon it? Do we add to it? Or can we take parts and pieces of it? Can we reroute it? These are all questions that we have based on these designs, as far as feasibility goes, which is where we're at. We're in feasibility, what's possible. So just wanted to explain that disclaimer a little bit.
That's
Right.
very-
So when I talk about touching that septic line, I just mean that it's disrupting it for the existing Shaker Lane School while it's still in operation.
Okay.
Correct.
We can add one more thing. The 3.2 will be a little bit more on the construction side because of the access. 3.1 has a much better access for construction, keeping it out of the school, the school operations, so you can keep it to the far right side of Shaker Lane, and that would make a impact on the construction, the work of the construction people.
Mhm. Any comments in terms of preference between 3.1 and 3.2?
I think my initial reaction would be 3.1. That lower field, it does get wet in that corner, but I would rather have a wet field than a wet school.
Good point.
And when we do excavation for the new school, that creates a lot of soil. So potentially we could raise the level of the lower field and solve some of those wetness issues. That's something we would look into.
Yeah. Is the construction, because 3.1, the building itself looks pretty similar to 4.1 is.
Yep,
that
it's exactly the
intentional?
same. We took some massing and just did a test fit to make sure that there's
Alright.
room for a building of that size over there.
Okay.
Michelle, what are your thoughts?
I think Steve Venuti my new best friend that he doesn't want a wet school. But I like 3.1 for a couple reasons. I think of safety and security. Fields are up front, communities up front, our kids are down back. I love the idea of an additional road access road. I know for the 3 or 4 families, that would be something new. That design just excites me a little bit more than 3.2 having 2 separate fields. It's just, sometimes there's little kids and it's after school hours. Sometimes there's little kids out back. If Tigers Den ever comes back here, there's traffic going back there. Now that would all be up front. I like 3.1.
Stacy, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I do like having all of the community fields and stuff away from the learning areas. Honestly, that's like a big benefit and a draw for me, just to be able to have the community can have access to that. We can also have a little bit more safety and security with the schools. So I think, that one seems like it's a really good option. So I'm leaning more towards that one. I kind of want to look at the benefits and the drawbacks a little bit more in the presentation, but
Yeah, I'm leaning more towards 3.1 as well. Boy, didn't take us long to pick the ones we feel would be better. That's great.
I just resent the presentation to you all, so you should have it shortly.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Where
And
would
Thank you.
expansion be on 3.1?
So on 3.1, probably in the stat corner here. 4 classrooms is not very big on one of these, so it would really just be a little small 26-foot 2-story addition.
Yeah.
I think on 3.1, I'm not sure the access road on the right-hand side of that picture is in the right location.
No, I think you're right. I think right now it's over here, but we
Correct.
still have
I think it's more behind the school. Up in the upper right-hand corner, I believe, if I'm correct.
let's see here. Yeah, so I think right here is where that DPW access is to this field.
Yeah, I think that's more realistic. Yes.
So we could route the road through there instead. We could consider both of these options. This one's kind of nice because there's a lot more frontage and you really have the ability to do some traffic calming here and give people some prep time before they're going to turn in and out. Whereas this is a little bit more squeezed, but we have a traffic consultant who can help us work through that. And the way that these loops are drawn right now, it would be really easy to shift that access point. So we'll be sure to study that if this is the option that's selected.
Yeah, because I'm not sure the school department owns where that current road is coming out right now. Where you're looking on this picture. Right there.
Here?
I'm not sure that's school department property. You know better than I do, maybe.
I mean, this is the
have the
property
survey?
line taken from
Okay, I might be wrong.
Stacy.
Yes. Could you go back to, I think it's 3.1 that I'm asking. Does MSBA, would they reimburse for, another great thing about the 3.1 is just like we said, the kids are kind of in more of like the wooded area. There's a lot of learning experiences that they could have there. Does the MSBA reimburse if we were to do like trails or our outdoor learning pavilion or anything like that? Is that something that they would reimburse for as well if we're trying to take advantage of that?
So the MSBA, the way that they calculate site stuff is really convoluted. And so basically when they consider something reimbursable, it's like, are they allowing you to do it, right? Are they going to contribute to it at all? So yes, they would consider it reimbursable, but the dollar amount that they are contributing for that particular thing is not super high. So it's sort of a matter of when we start looking at budgeting and how much site stuff is going to cost and we get into real numbers. However, that's not to say that because you have all this space, that can be done at any point in the future. And you have a lot of ability to improve this over time and just add fun little things to it back in the woods, sort of as the way that the existing playground has expanded with the garden. There's a butterfly garden, there's Girl Scout projects, things like that. So it's kind of a long answer, but it's the MSBA process, a little convoluted.
I just wanted to clarify one thing. So when we're talking about MSBA reimbursement, it's not the full price of it. If it's $1 million for a playground, for example, then it's not, they don't give you $1 million. The town of Littleton has a allocated percentage of that cost. So it is very convoluted in the sense of it's not free in it as far as coming as part of the project, but there's a percentage that the town of Littleton that will determine. I'm not sure if Suresh or Mark, I'm not off the top of my head recalling the percentage amount.
It's 8%. They cap the site costs at 8%.
For the town though, the town's
Oh,
like
I don't know
48.
what the town would be, but for the budget, anything
Yeah.
above 8% for site costs would be borne by the town. So
Yeah,
trails and things like that, if it's within that 8%, great. If it's not, then they'd have to pick it up.
yeah. So
Well, that's good to know.
yeah, we'll work with you on it.
Yeah, my guess is right now is about somewhere between 45 to 50%, total. And that too, again, based upon the square foot cost that they allow. So it's not if the total square foot cost is, let's say, $800 a square foot, and they have a limit of 600, it's 50% of the 600 and not 50% of the 800. So there are too many formulas get applied, and if your effective rate right now, let's say 50%, assume you're getting 40%. That's what I would start with. Don't expect anything more than that, because anything above that is just a bonus.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned up front that by the 27th, you're gonna have a cost estimator look at all these designs?
Yes.
I can jump in with that. So we're actually going to send this presentation as is to the estimator. We're going to tell them the square footage of the building, how much is, and for the different options, break down essentially how much is add addition renovation, how much is just a reno, how much is new construction. So we'll get a cost per square foot. So our goal is to send it this week. We'll have it back in 2 weeks, the 26th or 7th, whatever that Friday is. We'll churn it through with our OPMs, make sure that it's aligned with current pricing. And our hope is to share it with everybody on the 31st, hopefully the next SBC meeting. So the goal is that we can have a more comprehensive discussion about the recommendation. I'm not expecting any surprises. A lot of the buildings are the same size. It's really the site cost that will change things.
So as part of that discussion on the 31st, would there be a breakout of, okay, this option is this much money and X amount is on the town that MSBA won't touch? Is it going to be to that level, or it just says this is what it's going to cost?
This is more, it's so high level and it's still based on diagrammatic forms of the building that this is just sort of the first taste of what, like, it's comparative among all the options. And so we're going to do cost estimate now, which is really high level ballpark type of number. We'll do another at the end of PSR. And that point we will have chosen one option to push forward. And then it's not until we get the third cost estimate at the end of schematic design that you're able to have a number that's real enough to set a budget. So this is just sort of the first taste of comparatively how these all are going to cost compared to each other.
But isn't that the decision about how much MSBA will cover go into which design we pick? I mean, if everybody loves 3.1 and that's the thing, but where you have to put in, millions of dollars more than what 3.2 would be, for example, I mean, it kind of leads things more to a 3.2 than 3.1. See what I mean?
Yeah. Because especially a huge downfall, as we talked about, was the Wickham Field. It's going to cost the town $1 million, right, to take down. So that
Right.
definitely adds and elevates the cost of that one.
But you're saying we're not going to know those things till after we've already picked one.
Well, if you're comparing between option 3.1 and 3.2, the amount that the MSBA, like their reimbursement rate, is going to be the same for both of these options, more or less. It's really when you get into a major move like this, it's shifting it off the site, where now you have a building that the MSBA does not consider reimbursable. That's where that type of information is really going to make a difference. So for now, the option 3s, 3.1 and 3.2, those are really comparing apples to apples. That's why it's option 3 versus option 4, even though they're both new construction. This one is off-site, and it has that extra complexity of what the MSBA will cover in this instance. Does that make sense?
Okay. So for 4.1, for example, to explain to the town that, hey, we looked at it and these are the benefits and drawbacks of this site. One of the main things is costs and those extra costs. So even though we may not be picking that, we probably still need not detailed costs, but something that can prove the point that, hey, we looked at it and it just wasn't cost benefit to the town to do this.
Yes, that is the type of number that we'll be getting back. And we need to actually balance that with the numbers that go into maintaining a structure, right? Because demolishing the existing Shaker Lane School in this 4.1 option, you don't have to demolish it, right? You can keep it, but then you have to pay to maintain it. So it's a little tough when you get all these factors going into what it's truly costing the town, but at least we're aware of them and we know that there is a cost to it that you wouldn't otherwise have.
Okay.
So I think what I'm hearing you saying that when we fill out the initial assessment and say that people felt that option 3.1 was better than 3.2, and the cost came in and option 3.2 was cheaper and afforded the same type of learning environment, etc., we could obviously change our mind and go with option 3.2.
Yes. Yeah, you can totally do that. We're not nailed into a final decision on these until we've submitted the PDP, basically. Obviously, we want a couple weeks in advance to know for sure, but right now, this evaluation form that you're filling out, this is not going to be the final decision on these.
And when is that submission to MSBA? What that you said PDP? When's that?
Yep, the SBC is voting to submit it during the meeting on the 21st. And if there's any changes or whatever that we need to make, hopefully nothing, but if anything, just minor tweaks. And then we will be submitting it officially to the MSBA on August 30th.
Mary Lee, why don't you pull the calendar up you have on the
Oh, thank you. I forgot I had this in here. All right, so we do need to talk about when this particular group will meet next. Right now, we're here on the 10th. We're going to take the results from today's discussion and the form that you fill out, and we'll include that as part of the presentation we make to the full SBC on the 17th. And then we have quite a bit of work to do over the next few weeks. And that's when we're going to really start to be getting into the interior design components of it. And then we'll need to be talking about those things with you on the 31st, approximately. We originally had said the 7th, but I'm actually out of town during that time, so we'd prefer the 31st, or at least this week, if we can make that work. And then we'd like to meet with you again in the future, but this is very much in the future. We can talk about that later. So the 31st is really the one we have our eye on.
So when we submit the PDP, the final document, we still have choices that we can make. Is that correct?
When you submit the PDP, you'll be submitting the code upgrade option, one ad reno option, and one new construction option.
Okay.
And then the PSR is where we take those three options and pick one favorite. Now, because the options that we've shown you are diagrammatic, the building shape will change. The square footage will change a little bit based on the work that Michelle and the ed planner are doing. But the site, like the location where it is on either the Shaker Lane site or the Wickham Field site, that's going to be, those are the three options that we're doing. Does that make sense?
Okay, so we'll have sufficient information, I would assume, in terms of financial costs to help us make that decision before we submit the PDP?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. So I think the only thing we have to do now is talk about other meetings times. So do we have an idea of how many meetings we need of the subcommittee prior to submission of the PDP?
I believe we just need one more here on the 31st.
Oh, 31st?
Yes.
That works for me, Marilee.
Does the same time, noon, work for you?
Got my calendar here.
Okay. We might make this one an hour and a half, seeing how this one went a little long.
I think that's a great idea. So 31st.
And that's the one where we'll be kind of getting a better understanding of the cost of the different options. Is that what we'll be discussing? Or no?
At that time, we will have cost information back from the estimator, and we'll be able to take a look at those 6 options in comparison with the cost and add that cost in as just one more factor in all of these things that go into making the decision.
To correct myself, just while we have the calendar here. So we're sending the presentation to our cost estimator this week, and we'll get it back on July 26th with the estimate. So it'll take us a day or two to scrub it through, make sure it's accurate, make sure we agree with it, make sure that their understanding of our design is appropriate. We'll do that on the 29th with our OPM and the estimator. We'll also scrub through it with us, and then we'll have it available for the 31st to review. So it'll give a little bit more substantial information as far as cost goes at that time.
But Stacy, does the 31st work for you as well?
Yes. Yep. 31st works for me. Did we pick a time?
Well,
12 to 1:30.
12 to 1:30?
12 to 1:30. Yeah. Okay. We're doing a Zoom again.
Yes.
Sorry. Yep. Okay.
Perfect. And Ryan, we haven't heard from you. Do you have anything you would like to add to the conversation before we adjourn?
Thank you, Kelly, but I think I'm fine. That seems like you have everything well under control. No, thank you.
And thank you, Studio G, Marilee and Merrill. You've excellent presentation. I can't imagine the amount of work that you had to put in to get this ready for us today. It's greatly appreciated. You know, when we see the PowerPoint presentation, it seems kind of simple, but it is simple. There's so much that goes into this, and thank you so much for what you did for us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time. And actually, this is pretty enjoyable for us. We like doing this type of thing. And I do want to say, so that it goes on the record, that Ryan provided us with a list of all town-owned properties. I think it was 60 some properties. And we looked through all of them, looking for additional possible locations besides Wickham Field. And most of them, 99% of them, were easy eliminations. There were a few others that we had questions on. And then Ryan's getting us more detailed information on those. But for the most part, the sites that were large enough and the right shape, right, not like a long, skinny bowling alley shape, but like a nice, chunky shape to it, a lot of them have agricultural protection restriction on them. And I think there's just a couple more he's looking at, but for the most part, Wickham Field is the one other potential site in the town that we've identified. Yes, Mark.
Hi, sorry, I was just going to say the next school building committee meeting on the 17th, we want to try to get the agenda together for that by maybe the end of this week, so it can be posted to make sure that everything that was discussed today and, you know, any details that come out can be added there for that discussion. And if that meeting needs to be, you know, longer than an hour, as well, because we may be, talking with them about a bunch of stuff that was talked about today. And the only other comment I have is the next meeting for this full committee is on the 21st of August, and we're submitting on the 30th. Is that a little too tight, or, whatever information we gather on the 31st, that's directed from the meeting on the 17th? Do we want to try to have an SBC meeting earlier than the 21st, or?
21st is actually a retreat. It's not a public meeting. So
August 21st is a retreat, so people won't be around for a meeting that night?
well, the school committee will, but we don't broadcast the meeting. It's just an internal meeting. So are you looking for a vote?
No, I'm just thinking if it's a lot of information is going to be pulled together by the end of July instead of early August.
Well, if it's a presentation, we can certainly fit it into the retreat agenda. I think that would be very helpful. It's just not going to be broadcast to the community.
Okay.
I guess, what's the quorum number that we need to take a vote? Because what has to happen before we submit the PDP to the MSBA is we need approval, a vote to say that the SBC says, yep, we're good, we want this, and the SBC approves us to submit it to the MSBA. So how many people? I realize that summer is August. So what's the count that we need to have for a quorum?
Ryan, do you have an idea?
So is it the quorum? I'm sorry, what's the question again?
What is the count that we need for a quorum to hold a SBC meeting?
I can't remember the number of specific members of the committee, but it would be the majority of that committee. So
I think there's 9 members. I think if I recall right, there's 9 members on the committee, so a quorum would be 5, I believe, correct?
Yeah, right.
Thanks,
Mhm.
Steve. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, to be clear, the meeting on July 31st, that's a noon to 1:30, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And the meeting on the 17th
6
is
o'clock.
6 o'clock at night, virtual.
Mhm.
And that's the full SBC.
I mean,
Right.
one thing I need to think about is, because it's such a compressed time frame, like the select board, Ryan, how are you feeling about?
Well, ideally, like, it would be good to
Go.
be able, maybe we even think about a joint meeting, Kelly.
That's a great idea.
You
That's a
know,
great
just to
idea.
do it at one time, because then all the voices, well, it also makes for one less meeting for everybody, which I think probably makes some sense. We have a meeting, the select board meeting is meeting on the 15th, and I'm looking at my schedule. I can't find it right now, but we actually have one meeting scheduled in August, but this would be certainly worthy of looking at you and I working together and trying to have a joint meeting to review these.
Right. With Studio G at that meeting as well.
Correct.
I think that would be helpful. I just want to make sure we don't end up in a corner where we're submitting this plan and we really didn't spend enough time talking to the school committee or select board about the process.
That would be an Achilles heel if we forgot that.
To
Would be.
that end, Kelly, not only the select board, but where is the community engagement? How does the community voice their opinion? Yeah.
So community engagement, we've got the survey, and at this point, I checked earlier today, we had 322 responses, so that's fantastic. And then there are a couple other things that we want to do, like potentially talk to the Littleton TV and see if they want to do some sort of interview with myself and or Meryl. And then there were a few other ideas. Meryl, I think you had a better list of community engagement things than I did. But those are sort of ongoing.
Right. We could also do the second leg of the video as well with the videographer we're using. But I'm thinking at some point in time, and it's probably after this stage where we have potential options that that have been vetted by MSBA, that we somehow have a public meeting where we can talk about the designs and the costs at that point in time. I think, Steve, is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah, so it's somewhere between, I guess, the PDP and the PSR.
Right.
I think during the PSR is a good time to do it, because that's when you've narrowed it down to 3 options, and really 2 options are most likely what's going to be pursued is the ad reno and the new construction option. And so this is really when we've given people something to actually respond to. As of right now, the community survey is sort of, tell us anything that you want, and they are not responding to anything. Whereas if we can show them the potential locations or the potential plans, then we can really start to get some different conversations with people and keep everybody informed and engaged.
Mm-hmm.
So it's towards the end of August we're talking about with that piece of it.
Or even into September.
Into September. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Ryan, you and I can get together and find a joint meeting time that works for both boards.
Yep, that makes sense. And Mark, too, if you could send over a draft agenda if we want to set that up for the 17th too.
Yep,
Yes,
we'll get that to you.
we'll try to do that by the end of the week. Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
And there's many hands up. I don't know who was up first. Suresh, I think maybe you were, or
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that there could be a possibility at the joint meeting which we have done in different communities, is the SBC and the Board of Selectmen jointly agree that the final review will be done by the superintendent of schools for submission to the MSBA. So they have reviewed the work, what's been done, presented to them, and then the final submission is subject to their final review, and they have already voted upon it. So it's summertime, that's always the case. You know, you come across very difficult to get quorums, and very, very difficult to get people together at the same time. So that's one possibility you can think about.
Mm-hmm. Stacy?
Yes. Yes, I was wondering how much longer is that community survey going to be available for people to fill out? Because I can just send one more blast, just letting people know that there's a deadline for it, or is it already closed out?
Yep, no, it's still open until August 2nd. And
August
even
2nd,
right now, with the over 300 responses, that is enough responses that we'll be able to present the findings at the 17th, at least to show which way the wind is blowing. And then when we do our next presentation after that, the 21st or thereabouts, then we'll have the full data from the survey.
Okay.
So, Stacy, if you could send out another blast, that would be great. We just did that last week, the second blast.
Yeah. So
Perfect.
August 2nd will be the deadline.
Yep.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Michelle?
So a couple of things, Mark Stafford, just to go back to your question about the agenda, and Ryan, maybe you haven't seen it yet. I know Kelly chimed in and I did. Steve Moore already drafted an agenda for next Friday's meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So you got that, Ryan?
Maybe I got it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you have it. It's in your email. Kelly responded and I responded and added a couple of items. So Mark Stafford, I don't think you need to get going on that. I think Steve Moore is on top of it because he said in the email that he wants to get this out by Friday morning.
right.
So I think if anybody wants to add anything else there, they can. And I heard someone mention 6 o'clock. These meetings that we have are 7 o'clock. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware that it's 7, not 6.
If you could share that draft with us, just so Studio G and we can look at it. I know we do the standard, approval of minutes, do the invoices, all that stuff, but we want to make sure that there's enough items on there for them to
What I'll do,
present.
I'll forward you, Mark and Merrill and Marilee, I'll forward you the email from Steve Moore, and then I'll
Okay.
forward you some of the items that I asked him to add on to that agenda.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think it would be okay if just for all of these agendas, we said just a general Studio G update. And then if there's one main thing that we need to look at, that can go on the agenda. But I know at least for the 17th, we have quite a few things that we need to talk about. So it's up to you how you want to handle the agendas.
Yeah, Marley, Mark, so I think Mark's got to run point with Steve Moore on these things. So that's what our OPM does. So, I mean, he's a volunteer. So, so Mark, I mean, maybe worth a phone call in terms of
Sure.
what should be standard things on the agenda, and
Yep.
that communication's taking place between our OPM and the chair.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
A quick logistics, Mary Lee and I will be at the site in Littleton along with Steve Mark over there on Friday. So if we're radio silent, that's why we're going to be at the site with 2 more consultants. So just a heads up for you all that we're not ignoring your emails. We're just walking the site. So,
Okay. So, Michelle, the meeting's at 7 o'clock then on the 17th?
Yeah, I think at one point early on, maybe last year, I can't remember if it was the year before, we
I've so
were
many meetings that-
6. We were at 6 and we moved them to 7. So I just want to make sure no one shows up at 6.
Perfect.
It is 7 o'clock.
Okay,
are they in person or virtual?
they're virtual.
Okay.
So anything else before we adjourn?
Fantastic.
Stacy, did you have another thing to add? Oh, your hand's still up.
Oh, I see 2
I'll put it
hands
down.
pop up again. No, Stacy or Michelle, anything else?